welcome back to the Psychedelic Entrepreneur. I'm here with my friends Dre and Charlotte from the Ancestor Project, formerly known as the Sabina Project. So, if you don't know who they are, you must listen in. The Ancestor Project is a Black-led platform for psychedelic education, legal ceremony, and integration. We work to return, or they work to return reverence to sacred earth medicine and look to ancestral practice as a form of harm reduction for modern journeyers. We believe our collective liberation depends on each of our radical self-transformations.
Mm-hmm.
And they integrate ancestral sacred earth medicine wisdom into the modern journeyer's experience to expand consciousness, reduce harm, and they believe this is the key in liberating all oppressed peoples.
Yep.
They, Dre and Charlotte, facilitate online and in-person opportunities for learning that support radical self-transformation in the name of collective liberation. So this is amazing. One of the first questions I have, because the last time we spoke, you were known as the Sabina Project,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's the Ancestor Project. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about this name change? I'm sure you've written about it, but just in case people didn't see it, what happened in this process? I would love to know.
Mm. So, we're in a profession where, a big part of our job to support people in the healing practice is self-reflection, right? A continuous process of self-reflection. And when we came up with the name, we were excited because it gave us an opportunity. People would ask questions like, why did you call yourself the Sabina Project? And we would give this really beautiful story about how Maria Sabina and was taken advantage of by Orga Gordon Watson, etc. And he appropriated this medicine and then shared it with the rest of the world, caused a lot of trauma to her family, and to the community in general. The Mexican government treated the folks unkindly, treated her like she was a drug dealer because all these folks were coming down there and using these medicines. So what was interesting is that even though the intention behind that was just really beautiful, right? You get to tell a story, it's a great name, but also we were appropriating. So, right? So we didn't ask for permission to use this name. We didn't ask the family how they would feel about this. We didn't ask the wee child how they would be impacted by this. And so we were doing the exact same thing that we were accusing other people of doing. So we made a change. And the second part was,
Wow.
it wasn't really 100% aligned with our values. So our values is not about just teaching about sacred traditions in Mexico, but that also our ancestors all over the world. Every human being has ancestors who participated in these relationship with these sacred animal and plant medicines, earth medicines. And the way we approach these medicines were very similar. And this is what we teach. So this was like a 1-2 punch. We wanted to clean up our mess, and also we wanted to be more clear about our message. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for being really humble about that. It's definitely something all of us, especially me, here I am, white, woman, upper class or middle upper class, probably. I don't know what I would be considered these days. Who knows? But here I am with
Beautiful
this behind
starbeam.
me, which I got. Yeah, which I got while down in the jungle in Peru working with, the indigenous peoples that I work with. But, I've even come into question like, okay, is this even appropriate? Is it okay? What's not okay? But at the same time, this is it's also the tattoo right on my arm, and it's a very deep part of my journey. So good calling yourself out on this. And then also, what's in the Ancestor Project. I love, in your introduction, what you say about, for modern journeyers. There's this bridge here, right? Like, let's talk about this a little, because this is something I don't know if everybody really understands the depths of what it means to work with the ancestors, to have ancestors, to even have an awareness. I will be the first to admit I spent probably until my 30s or late 20s at least, like with zero awareness of my ancestors other than the family tree I grew up with on the wall, which in itself thankfully I had an awareness since I was a kid because there was a family tree around the wall of my bedroom. But can you talk a little bit about like why the Ancestor Project?
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah. So, before we started recording and we're kind of talking about the different pathways into uh, a medicine path or a psychedelic journey. Um, and that, frequently what we see in the modern journeying, typically Western setting, is that we have young folks leading other young folks into this path, which is where a lot of the harm can come from when folks who are really excited about the power of the medicine or the experiences that they've had and they want to share it, or they don't have access to education on how to safely work with the medicine, and they end up in situations that are re traumatizing. And what's interesting for me in this work is that, um, my introduction to this medicine was in that way, was from other young folks. And because I was always in a community setting, but there wasn't necessarily a conversation around intention or preparation. It was much more um, approached as a recreational activity.
Mm.
And while I gained a lot of benefits from that, and I can look back on those experiences and integrate them now, I spent some years sort of like trying to traverse this space and not caring for myself in the best ways or working with the medicine to heal myself.
Mm,
And so I think we want to, in our messaging, redirect the lens back to our elders and back to our ancestors who have millennia of experience for us to learn from in how we can work with these medicines for our rite of passage into our purpose and into our true self, and then
mm,
how we use that to be in better relationship with each other and
Hmm.
in better relationship with the land and the environment that we exist in.
mm.
Mm. Truth.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you're addressing this. This is beautiful because, of course, a lot of us, me as well, got onto the path that way, and re-traumatization is a very real thing.
Hmm.
It's actually been coming up a lot just in conversations with people who are working in this field, with my own therapist, with my, partner who's a therapist. It's and someone else I know just recently, kind of a stranger, had a really bad experience, and it was exactly what we were talking about. Someone who had a powerful experience with medicine decides they want to start facilitating it. She goes
Hmm.
to him. She told me quite literally, he gave someone some ayahuasca afterwards and said, make sure you do it with a friend around. And I was like, I know, my heart actually stopped when I heard that.
Mm.
Because I know, I'm like, I've heard like myths about these things happening, but now I actually know someone this happened to. And I was like, okay. So I'm really glad you're talking about this and bringing this awareness in. Now, let's talk about your own journeys and your own paths because I've heard this story. I've heard, a fair amount of it, but I absolutely love it. And I feel like learning from our past experience is so important. And like you mentioned, these sacred earth medicines can actually help us step into our purpose and become our authentic, truest, free, sovereign selves. I would love to hear your stories. Like, how did you get onto this path? And, where did your shift happen into making this your psychedelic career, pretty much,
Mm. Mm.
for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm thinking about like how many, there's so many pieces that puzzle I want to address. So before we get to that, I want to mention about the friend. So
Mm,
look, there's a really good way to eliminate this behavior, right? This experience. We have on our site, you can download a free, um, digital content that talks about how to choose your healer, right? What are you laughing
Mm-hmm.
at? I say digital content.
Yeah.
Can't ruin it ever, right? If listen,
There's no comment. It's a guide. It's a question
A
guide.
guide.
thank
Yeah, the
you,
guide.
guy, thank you, thank you.
I got you. I got you.
But
How to
it
vet
talks
your
about like
shamans.
right
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
because you should ask some basic questions, and I would say
Yeah.
from a Westerner's perspective, if you are doing these medicines and they're not doing a health and wellness intake, that's like a first red
Oh
flag
my god.
that you should have in
It's
this
a
conversation.
no.
That's
It's a huge, Um,
Don't
but
do
also
it.
understand with compassion that the ego is really problematic, right? And this can propel
mm,
people to a place where they think that they're ready to serve this medicine because they're not building a relationship with these plants, right? They think this is kind of like something a commodity to fix me or whatever, versus like I am in right relationship. I'm instead of using this medicine, I'm developing a relationship with the sacred plant or animal medicine, the tremendous amount of wisdom. And the other thing I wanted to say about ancestors,
mm,
so when we think about ancestors, we're typically thinking about human beings, right? And that's great
mm,
because
Mm.
human beings are your ancestors, but also everyone who's listening to this podcast, I have a secret to tell you. You are a carbon-based creature, which means that everything in this universe you are related to, right? Everything in this universe has
mm,
carbon. So the rock people, the oldest ancestors on this planet, are the wisest ancestors. So talk to them as well. The standing people,
mm,
the tree people, very wise ancestors. Talk to them. Talk to the plant people. So don't think of just this. Don't necessarily anthropomorphize everyone from a human perspective, right? Because we're the youngest creatures on this planet. We're the babies, right? Don't know much about
mm.
anything. So don't
Literally.
just rely on the wisdom of your ancestors who 150 years ago participated in abuse, right? Right? Think about like some of your wiser ancestors who have been here for a while and can give you guidance on how to be in right relationship with this earth and all the creatures on that, right? So just some food for
Mm,
thought in addition to the other ancestors. Okay, so my story. What I would say is that I started out my first experience with any of these medicines. I was 40 years old. I had sacred. I had sacred relationship with cannabis. Um, had a beautiful experience that really opened me up to do mushrooms. Then I sat with Grandma Ayahuasca, and I've been apprenticing with that medicine for 12 years as a facilitator, but also Sweat Lodge, Vision
mm,
Quest, tons of meditation um, have also really edified me and led me to uh, the conclusions I've had around how to work with these medicines. Or well, not conclusions, really. What I would say is the genius moves through all of us. Not we are not the creators of the genius. The genius moves through us, and so for whatever reason, the universe chose to use us as vessels to express this message, which is there is two important elements to your medicine practice. The first is you want to heal yourself, but it's not just about you. It's you heal yourself so you can heal the world. And although
mm,
it is really popular in the West to label, to give yourself a diagnosis, a DDSM, and that's the reason why you're doing these medicines, the truth is that every human being has trauma. Even those people who
mm,
have perfect parents, I haven't met those people, but
yeah.
the ones who have perfect parents and no trauma in their lives, just the birthing process is traumatic. So
Mm,
um, we all would be served if we developed a relationship with these medicines so we could be a greater participant in the global tribe, right? The global healing of
mm,
our entire community. But if you come to these medicines just to deal with your anxiety, depression, or drug addiction, right, or your narcissism, without the other part, which is I am also responsible participant in this community, then you will end up in a situation where you believe that you are the God consciousness and everything revolves around you and cause trauma and harm, and believe that because you have one ayahuasca experience, then now you are equipped to lead ceremony, right? That's how that abuse starts, right? So, no disrespect, because there are some people, there's a rare individual who has been called under their first ceremony to lead ceremony, but like what I would say to you also, if you think that you're that person, let's look at the results. If you're causing trauma and harm in your ceremonies, you are not ready. Stop it and allow this medicine to be the path, right? Because this is not like about your ego edification. The vomit
mm.
that's going to be splashed in your eyes from from a practitioner, it's not sexy. It ain't romanticized. You're to care for people, right? Just like stop the like the one-off shamanism stuff, right? How about you heal yourself first before or begin that process in earnest before you start like trying to help support other people because you're going to cause trauma.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So much. I mean, and again, I'm like, I even try to check my own ego that says so much ego in especially I found Westerners, and
Right,
then you go into white Westerners, and because I've had my own experiences where I'm like, okay, that's pure ego, that's pure ego. And the more in tune you are with these plants and the medicine and the earth and the energies, you pick up on it right away. Like I have walked into rooms going like this guy doesn't feel right,
right,
and that's where I'm really, there's pros and cons, right? I'm trying to actually eliminate the word good and bad from my vocabulary
right,
because there is this idea of like, well, okay, maybe if someone's journey is to go through that, like maybe that's how they learn, but it's still there is this irresponsibility on some level of people not keeping their egos in check. And it is interesting because these medicines, I was talking to someone just the other day. I was like, even the medicine itself, I mean, even me, I make fun of myself. I'm like, medicine told me to go do a summit about psychedelics and purpose. But I had those messages for years and I ignored them because I was like, well, let me see what's real, like let me keep the ego in check. Like, is that really a download or is that this part of myself? And it's sometimes it's even hard to distinguish, like, okay, what's true source versus like your ego that's telling you to go pour medicine tomorrow, like after your first ceremony. And I find this is an interesting conversation because I don't know about you guys, but me being where I am in this world now, I hear so many people saying, "Well, I'm here to be a trip sitter. I'm here to facilitate. I'm here to give mushrooms," and I'm like, I don't ask questions, I'm just like, well, whatever, to each their own. I don't work with people like that. I mean, I have a few clients who facilitate, but they've been trained. Like they're not pouring ayahuasca. They're
right.
doing certain detailed therapeutic settings and trained in a therapeutic setting. But it's interesting to kind of witness this because it's something that I don't know. Have you witnessed this kind of becoming more of a thing out there, or is this just me and my perception where it's like all of a sudden everybody's like getting
No,
their
I mean,
hands in and
no. So I
I
think
feel like,
this.
oh,
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
you
I'm
guys
sorry.
go.
Go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think that we like also, I would say yes, like see that pattern sometimes in like integration circles, for example, that people are early in their experiences and they're really excited about how powerful the medicine is and connecting them with their ancestors and helping to start to break these, you know, generational cyclical patterns of abuse. Um, and I think similarly for a long time it was like sort of a react or the response to it is like we have to like try to educate folks and that is why we do a lot of what we do around how you build a relationship with the medicine, how you guide yourself through ceremony and create your own ritual practices. But it's also sort of a testament of the medicine, right? Like, a lot of the medicine that folks have access to in the US is psilocybin, which comes from a mycelial network that is a giant network of communication and sharing. And so it makes sense that that network would want to continue to spread itself
Hmm.
and does that through the vessels that choose to answer the call of the medicine. So I think it's like a two-part of, you know, having the education available for folks so that they understand that this is a pathway. There is a lot of learning that needs to happen and relationship building that needs to happen with the medicine prior to putting yourself in that role of facilitator, because really it's the medicine that puts you in that role. So, learning to like actually communicate and commune with the medicine so that you can hear, when it may call you in. Also, though, I feel like early on I had to like let go of this idea that I would ever serve medicine also.
Mm,
Like
mm,
Mhm. Mhm.
accepting that it's partially ego that is like I want to be the one in the role of serving.
mm,
And then being able to open myself to hearing the message of being called to actually do that. So,
Mm.
mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ri-
Yeah, yeah, I think that's
Practice
really
keeping it in
beautiful.
check, right?
Yeah, yeah. To piggyback off of what you said, Charlotte. So, for me, it's interesting. Like I said, I've been apprenticing for over 12 years, and I only serve medicine to apprentices. Um, my primary focus is combo, and
Mm,
it makes sense that if you have a mystical experience with, let's say, Grandma Ayahuasca, that you feel this excitement and compulsion. You just want to share this good news with everybody. I get it, right? And my first ceremony, I was like, oh my God, I want to share this medicine with the rest of the world. But then there's the integration process, right? And
Yeah.
integration is about
mm,
paying attention and listen. Notice how the plants interact, right? They take the time, right? Their energy is a lot more subtle, right? There's subtle messages or languages. So there's a learning that needs to there's a relationship that needs to be built with these medicines. So if you're really paying attention to these medicines, there's no shortcut to this conversation, right? It's like a long process. If you look at historical precedents around people who are qualified to heal to share these medicines, 20 with the people that I apprenticed from, they were in the jungle for 20, 30 years, and still
yeah.
some of them still not qualified to share medicine. So how is it that you, after one ceremony, this is
Yeah.
amazing, like
After
but
one
also
ceremony and then having, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
no, go ahead. What are you saying?
No, like one ceremony, and then this is where the modern journeyer piece comes in as well. Our integration process is very different because we're not living in integrated communities and
No,
Mm,
societies.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
mm.
So, like, if it takes 20 years when your shaman is your next door neighbor, it's going to take longer when
Right, right, right,
you
right.
This
live in a
You should,
concrete jungle.
right,
this
and you
is
should be
literally,
okay
you
with
guys.
like
That's
you should be
that's
okay
why
with
I moved out of the city.
right, exactly, right.
Yeah,
You should be okay
yeah,
also with not, with not serving the medicine. But what I would say this is
Yeah.
that what I've noticed is when you're really in flow with the spirits that move through all things and with your spirit allies and guides, you don't actually have to do anything but focus on cleaning your mirror, right? To as a practitioner, right? That the medicine will conspire on your behalf. You just need to get out of the way. So if you are truly called to serve this medicine, it will be very clear because the path will be laid before it'll be presented. Your teachers will be present themselves for you. The opportunities to heal and do your dietas will be presented for you almost like effortlessly, right? Like, I set my first ceremony, my very first ceremony. I was lucky enough to have a rebirth. And then 3 weeks later, I'm in the jungle for my first dieta, right?
Jeez.
And doing my medicine, and it was just like it was no struggle. It wasn't like, oh, I got it was like, okay, boom boom, yep, I'm free for this next 10 days to be in the jungle. And I actually have the money to do this. Like it was just a free flowing thing. I didn't have to push anything, and I noticed that whenever I'm pushing in my path, it is the ego. Whenever I'm just
Mm-hmm.
there in the presentness, it's almost like, I don't know if you've seen those Spike Lee movies where the person is just moving forward, but they're
Mm-hmm.
standing still, and it's that process for you. So
Yeah.
maybe that'll inform and help a person, like, to know whether or not they're ready to be on this path. And also, I want to have compassion for you, for who are those
Yeah.
people who feel so excited, because I totally get it. Like, I want to share the good news with everyone else, but just remember, just like you, the medicine called you and you answered the call. Let the medicine do its job. Get out of the way. Like, allow the
Mm,
medicine to call those people in. You don't need to proselytize, right? And then when they're ready, the medicine will provide the
yeah.
opportunity for them to sit and connect with it.
this
Allow.
conversation is cracking me up because this was like our first phone call ever. Was me being like, I've been messing around with this stuff for some time, and I want to do these circles. And Trey was like, "Who are you? What are you like? Okay, have you, apprenticed? What lineages are you from?" And I was like, and then we had a whole, I mean, it was kind of like a process of integration and then
Mm.
preparation and sitting in ceremony with combo and then like taking my path onto in a much more like uh yeah, building a relationship with the medicines as opposed to like can I curse on this?
Yes, of
Oh,
course.
okay. My partner always says, he'll be like, before I was like, you fuck around and you find out,
Yeah.
versus you like put some intention into it. And
Hmm.
then, you still don't have expectations, but you're at least guiding your path a little bit more and making like a conscious commitment to it.
Yeah. Well, and now look at your path. You've become this. I mean, both of you are like leaders and educators and influencers, and now you actually are doing this work. You're just doing it. I mean, honestly, I think it's almost more important the work that you're doing than. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah,
Like
no, I mean, I
you
think
know what I
actually,
mean?
thank you for like looping it back to it because that's exactly it, right? Like, I took myself on my own tangent, but that, the idea that I had was one, could I have managed to share medicine with people and like not cause harm? Fingers crossed, probably. I'm
Yeah.
like a pretty emotionally intelligent person, but like that also would have been much more limited than the work that we are doing now and that we're able to do because we like combine forces. So I'm grateful for that redirection and coming out of a space of like youth led psychedelic communities into having access to, I'm not going to call Dre an elder, but a baby elder and
Yeah.
his elders and teachers and and calling in the ancestors. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And yeah, I actually want to mention, I want to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned about integration and like,
Mm,
what you said about integrated communities or shamans next door. I'm like, whoa, yeah, it's huge. And also this concept of for modern journeyers. Because
mm,
I've gotten into this conversation a lot around me and the work I'm doing, which, it's like I just help people grow their businesses. I don't serve, I don't hand out, I don't facilitate. I know where my path is. It's very clear. I just help medicine people grow their businesses. But I've gotten, the haters writing me in, like the random people off the internet, who, by the way, tend to be white men. I'll just say that. They'll say like, these medicines they should be free as they are sacraments from the earth. And, you shouldn't even be talking about these. I've actually had, I mean, I'm talking like 4 people out of, 7,000 people. It's not, it's 4, not huge amounts, but people who are saying, this is not allowed. You shouldn't be doing this.
mm,
Psilocybin should be free. Ayahuasca should be free, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, this whole concept of modern journeyers, like, we are incarnated in 2021 right now during these interesting, ever changing times for a very good reason. And, who's to say what is right or wrong or good or bad or not allowed versus allowed? And I'm curious, like, how does this play into the work that you're doing and what are your views on this? And then, the integration on like on such a deep level of like, how do we get this right? How do we, because we all know the medicines aren't going to disappear because a handful of people think we shouldn't be doing them.
Right.
It's going the opposite direction.
Right.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
So
So I'll take the
go for it.
entrepreneurship, jump into integration. Okay. So on this entrepreneurship, like, how do I feel about this? I think there's two parts. One, I think uh, I'm very excited that people are beginning to contemplate, ways of like supporting their family and their tribe. with being professionals in this industry. I think that's really super important. The issue around capitalism is that the American brand of capitalism is probably the most abusive in the world, right? It's predicated on the slave trade, right? So the first 400 years, this brand um, of capitalism was based off of like free labor of other human beings, right? And then you can see how you know, throughout our lineage here in America, like there's consistency of abuse, right, with capitalism. Right, think about like we needed unions because it was commonplace to have human beings work for 18 hours in a sweatshop with their children, right, and pay them low wages. Even now, we have to argue with
Still
people who
doing
make 1,000 times more than their lowest employee to give them a livable wage, right? So
it.
clearly,
Yeah.
capitalism in this country has not been responsible, and it does produce a lot of unhealthy things. The food we eat is unhealthy. Um, a lot of the marketing is around convincing you that you're
Yeah.
not good enough, so you need
Not good
this thing
enough.
to fix you,
Need
right? So there's some
modern
this
slavery, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. However, the
Not as bad
idea,
as getting whipped, but yes.
right, right, absolutely, but the idea that a healer, let's call him a professional, and let me just change the word healer, because a facilitator, because I don't heal anyone. The medicine does the work, and I'm a bridge between the medicine and you that is doing the healing for yourself. But the amount of study, research, diets, and constant self reflection and healing that a person needs to do to even be in a position to support people in their healing practice, the idea that that person is going to spend the rest of their lives doing this but not be able to feed themselves is absolutely ridiculous. Since when does that make sense? You want that person. You want a person who is on their game, so they're not causing trauma and projecting their bullshit onto you, right? And that takes a lifetime of effort and sacrifice to do that. I think that person doesn't need to starve themselves to death so that you can feel good about that, good about that process. Now, there also is an issue of accessibility, right? And equality, right? Who has access to these medicines? So you shouldn't also need to pay $350 for an ayahuasca ceremony. We could probably limit that, but there's also this issue that there's if every human being was using this medicine, it probably would run out. So we need to kind of balance and consider like
Wow.
all those, and then the reciprocity for all those people, those elders who have been using this medicine and practicing these traditions. And then the last part is evolution. Up until 70 years ago, the only person who was sitting with ayahuasca would be the shamans. Everyone else was not sitting with the medicines, but the medicine has educated us that now it has evolved where all of us sit in ceremony with the medicine. I'm just speaking about ayahuasca as an example. And then I see a space where we are getting to the place where you are your own guru, right? So the elders will bring you to the space, teach you how, and some of us, more of us that are capable of meeting our primary needs, have the privilege of contemplate the higher levels of perspective. What is my meaning in life? What I want to do. So I think there's an evolution there. But I just want to just like for all those people who are giving their opinion, their unsolicited opinion, right? There's so much unconsciousness in you writing a little tweet or giving your uneducated opinion about what someone else is doing. How about you just mind your business and focus on like healing your path? Because clearly, when you are sending these little Instagrams and telling people they should or should not do, there's the level of ego that is in that clearly says to me that maybe you should just be quiet, right, and work on healing yourself and your path. Be a little bit more compassion. You don't know more than anyone else knows about this medicine path. And and I don't know of any community, indigenous community, where the healers are destitute. In fact, in many of those places, the healers are well taken care of because there's so much value in what they offer to the community. And listen, the amount you have no idea the amount of fasting and dieting and constant sifting and self-reflection that is required to even be in the space where you call yourself a healing shaman. whatever you want to call it, facilitator. So I just think that to me does not resonate as truthful.
Mm,
Take care of
wow.
Agreed.
your healing.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
Charlie, you want to weigh in on any of that? Because I love this conversation. I love because it's we're all trying to figure this out. Where do you and I was going like this when you said $350. I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but ever since COVID hit, I'm now invited to these like $1,000 ayahuasca ceremonies, and I'm like,
I was
Jesus
gonna say, I
Christ!
like
Like,
don't think there. I feel like
I
that's an
I'm
old
like, where?
school price point. It's like
Now
getting
listen, if
crazier and crazier.
Oh no, I
charge
have my
if you're going to charge
limitations.
$1,000 and then
You can go to
pass that
Peru.
back and give some reciprocity to folks in
Yeah.
Peru, and then also scholarship other people who can't afford that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, look, if you're a person of significant privilege, pay a little bit more so that we can,
Yeah.
use your privilege, use that advantage of your privilege to bring more people in the fold by using that money. Maybe buy an
Mm-hmm.
extra ceremony, and we have a mutual ceremony fund. You could donate to funds. You
Mm-hmm.
could buy an extra ceremony and donate to someone else. You could pay a little bit more, an equity scale of pricing, so that someone else who doesn't have the same privilege could also be supported in ceremony, for sure,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To do that. But if you're charging but these costs are just prohibitive. Like I can't imagine. I'm so glad I'm not invited to $1,000 ceremony,
I
right?
know.
350 was enough for me because we had to pay 350 for 3 nights minimum of sitting. So that was
Oh
like
wow.
that was $1,000, but it
That
was
is
mandatory
$1,000.
to 3 nights of sitting, but it was not for one ceremony. That's like three
Yeah.
thousand dollars I would have been paying.
Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah. That's wild. No, I mean I agree with all of that, especially this point that like frequently the medicine people of a community are the most venerated. And, they were certainly not being asked to provide services um, for free. So money is the exchange system that we currently use, as you said, in this 2021 incarnation. So um, that is the current exchange. you know,
For
I
now.
think that, working with medicines allow us to decolonize our imagination. So maybe we will get to a point where we don't have, uh, debt and capitalism and credit scores and all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
in this current moment, that's where we're at, which I feel like is a nice segue into the conversation around integration,
Mm-hmm.
and how integration is so key for taking your downloads and turning them into daily action. And this is where we like really get into this idea of how you use your radical self transformation for collective liberation.
Mm.
We frequently see in the well being space that folks talk about the mind body spirit connection. And
Mhm.
this is, of course, like a key starting point, the triumvirate that we're all familiar with. But when we talk about integration, we are also adding in community and environment and how we balance our health in all of these areas, our well-being in all of these areas, um, and yeah, how we work with the medicine to make these big shifts of moving away from abusive systems like capitalism, and how we take these incredibly expansive experiences that take us away from the confinement of the 3D and who we are as humans and our identities and our egos and race and gender and all these constructs that we have, in your journey to space, you get to be free of that and the pressures that come with it. Um, but the reality is that we do come back to a world and a place in time where there are a lot of oppressive structures and systems in place that do not benefit all people,
Mhm.
and do not um, support an equitable, co creative environment. And so it is our responsibility as modern journeyers who have the privilege of sitting with these medicines and receiving these downloads and these insights to truly take them and work with them to co-create a new reality,
Mm.
that's based in, love and joy, and just collective responsibility, I think, and
Mm.
compassion.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking more about this. I was thinking more about this idea of like this should be for free, and I liken to this to like a sweat lodge. Traditionally a sweat lodge, there's no cost. You bring tobacco, that's your offering to sweat lodge. But if anybody's ever built a sweat lodge, the amount of hours it takes, the amount of manpower it takes to build a sweat lodge, the sacrifice that those saplings make so that you can sweat, right? And cry for your visions. It is the amount, the labor that it requires, and then this idea that the person who is the keeper of that lodge is this is a 7-year commitment at minimum, and then whenever someone is ready, or to ask to request, you offer tobacco and you sit and sweat, and the idea that that person needs to be in poverty, just come on, this is people get ourselves together. This doesn't even make it's not even a compassionate conversation
Mm-hmm.
to have around that. But and the last thing I'll say about this I keep hearing this consistently, where men, usually white men, are like, uh, giving these unsolicited opinions on social media. Like, I don't know what this is. Is this a place of privilege where you feel like you are entitled to like share your opinions with folks? Just like, even if your point of view is the correct one, how about you create
Mm.
an organization? How about you create ceremony space and you do it for free? Like, if this is what you really feel, do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Right. But if the
Mm.
medicine doesn't think that Beth should be teaching people about how to be an entrepreneur, the medicine will take care of that on their own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're connected with the path, you know, be an example, but stop like doing that, because that's just traumatizing to the people that have to deal with this constant like unnecessary, like it's almost like passive aggressive attack on
I
other
know
people.
it's you know what it's I'm so glad. I'm just cracking up because someone was pissed that I interviewed Paul Stamets. I
Mm.
was like, dude, you don't even know what I went through to get that interview.
Right.
2 years of asking and like probably 500 emails and like phone calls. And I
Right.
mean, I was like, but it's interesting because, I know we know, I'm like, a lot of us are very aware that there's just, and this is going to be so much more in the collective. It's already here, but people are just projecting so much outward, external, 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 blame, 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 blame.
Mm.
And I'm like, start with this, start with yourself, start with your own questions about what is it in you that you're projecting onto others that you don't like within yourself or that you haven't looked at in yourself. Like, where's that
Mm.
shadow aspect that you're afraid to look at within, your history, your collective, your own trauma, your ancestry, on and on and on. And I love what you said about sweat. So I've actually been quoting this a lot. One of my teachers who lives up here on native, well, we're all on native land. They go to Sundance. He dances. I have a lot of friends that go to Moon Dance every year. And last year, they went to dance out in South Dakota, and they took monetary contributions, and they said, you know what, tobacco doesn't buy gas. Like tobacco doesn't put gas in the car tank. Like these, the elders that they're dancing with, they still, it's like, let's get real here. How many indigenous peoples like truly live off the land, especially here in America? Like they still have cars, they still need to buy equipment, they still need, certain supplies that they're not able to, grow themselves. I mean, we could talk
Mm.
about this for hours. And I was like, yeah, giving an offering of tobacco when you have the actual money to give, they're like, please donate to help support them in doing this work, which then, this is what to me actually facilitates like worldwide change on some level. It's like these indigenous peoples, this is where the sacred reciprocity comes in, where, there's only so much empowerment you can do by giving some tobacco. But like, what
Right.
about the equal, and like you said, like the $1,000 ayahuasca ceremonies, I'm like, yeah, I want to know where that money's going. Like,
Right.
and yeah, I also agree, like, people need to be supported. And you're right, like, traditionally the healers are like the most revered in the community, and not to be like starving. And like, and the reality, I say, look, have you ever seen ayahuasca being made in person? It's like, it takes so much human labor, and
Oh,
no one's gonna, it's like, it's I mean, but anything, it's like,
right.
and right now, like Charlotte said, we are, this is the paradigm we're in. We have this thing called money. Hopefully, there's this day where we're going to figure it all out and it won't exist anymore. But right now, it's like, how can we be in this sacred support? And it's interesting. I'm so glad you're bringing in environment and community into integration conversations,
Right.
because I actually haven't heard anybody mention this. Honestly, to this day, I've not been to a real integration circle. I've been to some that were just, like breath work or whatever. But I'm curious, how do you bring in the conversation around community and environment into integration? Like, what is it like? Do you have a
Mm,
particular tool or practice that you do?
that's a great question. I I feel like in our integration circles we noticed early on that the circles that we currently run, actually, exciting news that we have a new circle offering.
Well, good.
So we run a BIPOC integration circle twice a month. It's completely free. And we noticed early on that the conversation just naturally gravitated towards healing, healing ancestral trauma, reclaiming ancestral strength, and and how we work with these medicines to liberate our communities. And so in that setting, I feel like it's just a natural part of the conversation. We are now offering a once a month integration circle for practitioners and folks in the healing arts, or aspiring to be in the healing arts, who are committed to working from an anti-oppressive lens. And this is a circle that the proceeds from the circle help support the Mutual Ceremony Fund as well as the sustainability of our work. And so in that space, we'll be talking more about some of the tools that we use to facilitate these conversations around community and environment and integration. So you should come join us.
Oh,
It's
yeah, and
going to
I
be
I
good
know a lot of
times.
people, a
Yes.
lot of people who would love to join that, and that's
Yeah.
I gave a workshop the other day because I'm like, I don't I just I help people start and grow their businesses. It just happens to be a lot of people on the medicine path.
Mm,
And I was saying, look, guys, like, if you want to start these integration circles, it's not just about go have a powerful experience, now you attend a circle and then you're done. Like, it's not that. It's life. It's day to day. It's day to day. It's like, how do we actually want to integrate for real into our daily moment to moment practice of how you want to co-create the world we're going to see from now forward. It's not
yeah.
just like, oh gee, that was a hard ceremony, let me go to someone's circle. And I actually mentioned this on Tuesday night during the workshop. I was like, we need to start getting more specific circles too, to address, like, I know more and more there are people doing this, but like, address certain, situations or needs of people. Like, one of my clients works with people with eating disorders, and it's like,
Mm,
okay, there's a group of people who want to resonate with other people who've gone through this, or who, need to understand this on a better level and have that community to do the actual integration with, and have
yeah.
that connection. I love this. I love this. I will be I will be sending those links around, but that one actually I have a lot of people who would love to attend,
Dope.
because they're actually, it has been feeling like I know I've gone to like one of Lorna's classes. I've signed up for one of yours that I end up missing, but there's not a ton of resources. Like, Shakruna does a lot of amazing work, but I that's, it seems very limited, for
Yeah.
people to
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, how do we create the new world that we all want to be part of, and like, on a real deal level, not just like take
Right.
some mushrooms and like feel good. It's like, no, it's about the integration.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. It's about living your life in ceremony.
Right. Well, I
Mm.
mean, like ceremony, and I think the integration piece, like think of it like a circle, right? So the what is true below is also above. So you start the integration process at the beginning, right? Which is you asking a set of you're doing an inventory, right? What are the habits, beliefs, people, and ideas that no longer serve you, that you're excited to let go of, right? That's the preparing for ceremony. Some of the questions you're asking, you're looking at the five concentric rings of self, your community, your environment, your physical body. Everybody does that. Mental body, that's kind of like common, and the spiritual body, right? So you do an inventory, an assessment of self. Okay, then you have ceremony, right? The awareness comes. Oh, okay, yeah. You can see your patterns of abuse. You can see how you support your abuse and your trauma over and over again, right? You can see how how you have, you're using that language to re-hypnotize yourself, right? And then the next set of questions: what are the habits, beliefs, actions, and people that I'm excited to, and this is the important word, attract in my life? So it's not about you, the doer, more
Mm.
like you are attracting and getting out of the way and allowing the universe to work on your behalf, right? Because now you've been made
Mm.
aware. And this is something, it's a continuous process of constantly self reflection, awareness, and actions. The actions that we're taking now to move forward in our continually healing process, right? It's not about, I'm gonna do an ayahuasca ceremony, and then I'm gonna go out and eat a McDonald's cheeseburger and Coca-Cola, poison my body, and then I'll clean myself up 6 months from now. That's not the way it works, right? Learn those lessons. I mean, it can work for you that way, but in my experience, whenever I don't pay attention to those lessons, I get put flat on my stomach and I'm purging and I'm puking in a bucket like
Yeah.
it's my ceremony again. So maybe you don't want to do
Like,
that.
Yeah.
I'm just, mm,
I feel like the more like, and that's even an extreme example. I think I've been thinking about this. Like, also don't go to ceremony and then, like be drinking again. We had
mm.
an intake
ooh,
call. Well, I had an intake call recently with someone and they like were really, I gave them the pre-combo dieta and they were like really rationalizing with themselves why they could drink a few days before ceremony because it was their birthday and they were a person who had sat with grandmother and I was like, well, it's this like and had been talking about, how much they respected the preparation to sit with grandmother. And I was like, it's the same with this medicine as well. It's the same if you're working with psilocybin or LSD or
Yeah,
MDMA.
everything.
Like if you go back to the same poisons and the same toxins, watching the news a bunch,
Yeah. Mm.
engaging with the same people who, you know, um, trigger your wounded inner child, like putting
Mm.
yourself back in those situations is just as toxic as eating the McDonald's cheeseburger and drinking a Coca-Cola.
right.
Totally,
And
totally.
and also, like, I want to say with compassion, like, so if you're a person who's having that conversation, probably there's an addiction, right? Right. And
Mm.
so this is not like most of us, I'm addicted to sugar, right? And so I have to be mindful about my sugar intake. And like before dieta, like I hate not being able to have my sugars, right? Or my salts. So, but think of it like this: if you are honest and done your self reflection, you are aware, right? Then with humility, you could say like, "This is a struggle for me. Like I want to not drink
Yeah,
alcohol, but I
Yeah.
can't because I'm compulsive."
yeah,
And grandma will be gentle with you. She'll be
Mm.
you're but the and she'll help
yeah,
you break that cycle of addiction. But don't go into it with this ego like, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. Because that is
Yeah.
when the suffering will continue for you and you're not really learning the lesson. There's a reason
yeah,
why there's a prohibition. Now, the other thing I want to say is we've been talking about ayahuasca, and what I thought occurred to me is like with mushrooms, right? There is this conversation around, well, mushrooms, is a little bit safer, right? Because there's for whatever reason. But what I think about mushrooms is that because it is a communication network and so open to frequency and vibration, the danger with mushrooms is because we don't have a culture where elders are bringing to this. This is why we have like a Silicon Valley that proffers let's do microdosing so that we can punch out more code and be more abusive and create more things, right? Instead of like, let's microdose so we can uh, solve the problem of poverty or solve the problem of
Right.
homelessness. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
let's create a let's create an app so people can dance on it and distract themselves more from it from doing productive activity, right? So, the
Mm-hmm.
anyway, you get the point I'm making. Like, yeah,
Relationships,
I don't. I
relationships
think
with the
mushrooms
plant.
is a little complicated because it does pick up the frequency of what of the set and setting. So this is. I think it's even.
Yeah.
With ayahuasca, there's a natural fear built in because the consequences of not being prepared are significant, right? With mushrooms, yeah, you could have a traumatic experience, but you're not usually puking your guts out. So people are like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I had a horrible experience, blah blah blah. I think also with mushrooms, set and setting are super important. With all these medicines, set and
Mm-hmm.
setting, don't be fooled just because they're free and easy to grow mushrooms. That means that, oh well, I can just go out and give mushrooms to all
Nope.
my friends like candy. Like there's still a level of
Yeah,
responsibility and
yeah,
trauma
yeah.
So
you
much.
harmed if you're not like paying attention to those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This all
Absolutely.
comes back to me, this the like that conversation, it all comes back to disconnection to the earth. Because that's what it is. I mean, I even a few years ago, I'm like, yeah, like I had one particular mushroom experience which happened to be during a very potent astrological transit, and that shit knocked me on my ass, and I was like, wow, I forgot that this is not just mushrooms every time. It's there's
Mm.
so much more to it. But I'm also like I'm very highly connected to these things. So then it's like the
Right,
sensitivities are very different. But I agree. It's like because we all know now there's microdosing courses and grow your own mushroom
right,
courses and and like and to some level I'm like whatever, to each their own. But it's that disconnection from the spirit of the plant and the actual like, well, what is this that you're ingesting into your body? It's
yeah,
like when I drink medicine, like even today, I'm working with some medicine this weekend, and I usually take flower essences. Like I have a
mm,
couple essences I work with, and I was like, okay, I need to lay off of those because their spirits are, it's like we need to give her the respect, and that one needs a
mhm,
little rest, and
yeah,
like, and to really listen, like what is this, and that's a flower essence, like,
yeah,
and people, and this is it's I could do a whole entire podcast on just this, but I do
yeah,
believe that at a deeper level, this it just to me it's like this is humanity's disconnection from the earth on such, it's like as above so below, everything's manifesting. It's like, well, what does it all come back to?
Mm.
Like come back to this, come back to this, and it's like, okay, your relationship with the earth, you and whatever you want to believe in, like higher self, spirit, creator,
right.
and it's just this, but in this world that we're in, I keep calling it the Amazon Prime effect. I don't know what else to call it, but
Uh,
it's like everybody just wants everything like instant, like, oh, I heard mushrooms solve my problems, let me just and
Yeah.
it'll
it's not
be,
a
I
slippery
can't
slope.
wait to see what happens over the next few years. It's an exciting time to be alive. It's a fucked up time to be alive. It's amazing. It's like, well, we'll see how this all plays out.
What we
It's
create.
quite interesting.
Yeah, I
But
think it's
before
going to
we
be
go,
what we create.
huh?
It's going to be what we create. Like
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean, like like elders like yourself, baby elders like yourself,
yeah.
are creating platforms like this where we can get this message out, right? So it is a we. Like at the beginning, you were like, you said we, and then you corrected and said me and Charlotte. But the truth is, you are part of that we. Like Ancestor
Mm,
Project, the message doesn't get out if you don't provide the platform, right? If
yeah,
you don't
man.
put the things in place, right? So I think the medicines have already spoken. What's going to happen is we think about how early the psychedelic industry, how new it is, but yet how already we're having these conversations, right? I wish we had had these conversations before the cannabis industry was developed,
Yeah.
right? And then we wouldn't be so focused on getting high and high THC and CBD, and let's distill it and isolate it so it's not
Oh
really
my
a medicine
god.
anymore. We can just get
Engineer
really
the hell out
stoned,
of it.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot.
Or
So we're
psychedelics
already
where you don't trip.
we're already shaping the conversation. I mean, not us, but these
I
medicines
hope.
are already spoken and shaping the conversation for the rest of the world, right? And you know even though people are misplaced with their intentions, or their expectations around this medicines, the fact that so many people are so excited about contemplating their existence and healing themselves, taking responsibility for their
Mm-hmm.
own healing, that's exciting news. You know?
Yes. Yes. I mean,
It
it's,
is.
that's the way I look at it. And this is why I'm trying to never use the word, or at least like try to be aware of the words good versus bad, because
Right.
in the end, no matter what the pathway is, because we all know, like even from our own journeys, like I know Charlotte's past is similar to mine with medicines. Like I started out really young and very recreational and party and like all the drugs, but look where it led. It led
Yeah.
to this
Yeah.
like really deep path. But so I'm like, you know what? Whatever it takes for people to get there, and it might mean this random girl I met the other day who had a bad experience with some guy who's giving out ayahuasca and after the ceremony and telling people just to make sure I have friends. I'm like, dude, that's crazy, but whatever it takes. I mean, that's my prayer for humanity is like, okay, we might have to go through the crazy, these stories, but if this helps facilitate someone looking at themselves and turning
Mm-hmm.
inward and looking at their healing and then having some awareness about the earth, the environment, the community, maybe this is it.
Yep.
But before we go, okay, besides your new circle is happening, tell people, what do you have coming up, the next few months or even 6 months or in the future? And we'll have all your links everywhere. And I'm definitely sharing your new circle with everybody I know, because that's very important, actually.
Yeah.
Very.
Yes, we have our new circle. We have a few spaces open still for our June virtual rapé ceremony.
Mm,
And then the thing I'm most excited about is the Psychedelic Emancipation course that is starting on June 8th. That'll be taught by
Mm-hmm.
Darren LeBaron or Darren Springer,
yeah.
depending how you know him. And he will be
No
sharing
relation to
about the
Jerry.
forgotten, no, he'll be sharing about the forgotten history of psychedelics in Africa from the north in Kemet all the way to the south with the
Mm,
San people in South Africa. So we are hype about that offering. And then
yeah.
he'll also be coming back later this year in September to do a course on sacred mushroom cultivation. So
Mm,
bringing in the sacred to mycology and the reverence so that we all understand that these may be medicines that we can grow at home sometimes, but still incredibly, incredibly powerful sacred teachers. So I'm excited for that, and there are other things. Trying to think. Oh, we
Magazine.
mentioned our mutual ceremony guide, ceremony
mm-hmm.
fund, and we also put out an interactive guide to create ceremony for yourself. So
Mm.
that's called Surrender, and you can find all of these things on our site.
Oh,
Perfect.
that
Well, we'll
interactive
definitely
guide is
put the
dope.
links out there.
That, yeah, you guys got to that interactive guide is pretty special. So check that out. I think in the fall we open it up for about 5, maybe 10 apprentices. So stay tuned for that. There'll be some information around that. I just want
Awesome.
for those who listen who are interested in doing apprenticing, I just want to make a couple of things clear. One, the process is at least 2 years long, and at the end of the 2 years, you may not serve any medicine. So if you're motivated to learn a lot of
Yep.
information and at the end still not be qualified to share these medicines, if you're looking for a place where
Come
you
on
pay,
down.
come on down. But if you're looking for a place where you pay some money and then all of a sudden, at some certificate,
You have a
you're ready to serve,
certificate.
it's not going to work like that way. This is a traditional path to healing.
Yep.
The good news is that even if you're not still qualified to serve medicine, you for other people, you will be qualified to serve yourself, right? Right? And that's the
Mm.
best thing you could do for humanity is get your stuff together so you're not traumatizing the
Yes.
rest of us, right?
Thank you.
Love you.
Thank you.
True.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful. We'll have to have you back on here. Thanks for being with us, Dre
Yeah.
and Charlotte. And we'll have your links all over the show notes and on the website. And we'll definitely get all your work out, because especially this circle, I think is actually so important with all these, it's like every day we all hear some news story and it's like, oh wow, people need to start really being educated and get their shit together. And it's like you just said, like, it's this, do the inner work. This is how we change the world. So thank you for being with us, and be
Thank you for
sure to
having
join us
us.
on next week's episode of The Psychedelic Entrepreneur.
Beth, we love
See
you.
you.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Ah,